I used to take whatever pills my wife handed me each night, trusting her the way a man trusts the last piece of peace in his life. But the night I pretended to swallow them, everything shifted. I watched her linger at the doorway, waiting, listening, almost calculating. And when I followed her, quiet as I could, what I saw made my blood turn cold. Some of you might know that feeling, when trust cracks and the truth finally steps out of the dark. I used to think life had finally settled into something steady. After 62 years of trying to keep myself upright, through loss and disappointment, the quiet evenings in Charlotte felt like a second chance. The house wasn't large, but it was comfortable, and for a while I believed my wife and I shared a simple rhythm that suited us. Most nights ended the same way. She placed 2 small pills on the corner of the kitchen counter, slide a glass of water toward me, and tell me it was just to help me sleep better. I never questioned it. Trust can make a man slow to notice the ground shifting under him. She'd grown more insistent lately though, not angry, just firm in a way that didn't match the softness she'd shown when we first married. "Don't skip them tonight," she'd say. Her voice carried an edge I couldn't quite place, but I swallowed whatever she gave me. A man who's lived as long as I have learns to pick his battles. I figured it was harmless. Still, small things began to rub at me. She'd correct me in front of friends from church, brushing off my raised eyebrow as if I were sensitive. She'd speak over me when I tried to answer simple questions. Those moments didn't leave bruises, but they left marks. I felt them collecting inside me, stacking like bricks behind the ribs. One evening, something shifted. I stepped into the hallway to grab my jacket, planning to drive to the store for a few things. The hook by the door was empty. I checked the counter, the bedroom, the small dish where I usually tossed my keys. Nothing. "Looking for these?" She stood at the foot of the stairs, holding the keys loosely in her hand. The look she gave me wasn't playful. It was patient, almost pitying. "You've been forgetting things," she said. "Let me keep them for now, just until you're steadier." My tongue pressed against the back of my teeth. Words crowded up my throat but refused to move. Forgetting things. I remembered more than she thought. Every slight, every time she spoke for me instead of letting me speak. Every moment she brushed aside my irritation like it was a passing cloud. "I didn't forget anything," I said quietly. She smiled, the kind of smile people use when correcting a child. "It's okay. That happens with age. I just want you safe." The weight of those words settled on me, heavier than the keys she refused to return. I didn't raise my voice, didn't reach for her hand or demand she stop talking to me like I was losing myself. I simply stepped back from her, feeling a sharp, silent sting run through my chest. Keeping the peace had been my way for years. After my first wife passed, I learned how to swallow things that hurt. Keeping my daughter steady, keeping my job steady, keeping my own grief steady. It all required quiet. That quiet had become a habit, a second skin. But standing there without my own keys, in a house I paid for, something inside me shifted. I walked to the back door and let myself out into the yard. The grass was still warm from the afternoon sun, and the air smelled faintly of the pines lining the fence. I stood there with my hands on my hips, trying to breathe past the tightness in my throat. That yard had always been my refuge, the only place I didn't feel watched. For a moment, I just listened to the faint hum of traffic drifting in from the main road. Silence usually settled me. Not this time. My fingers curled into my palms. The longer I stood there, the clearer the thought became. This wasn't care. This wasn't love shaped into overprotection. This was something else, subtle, creeping, wearing my patience thin. I felt as if a thin layer of myself had been scraped away, and nobody but me had noticed. I leaned against the railing of the porch, looking toward the neighbour's yard. Their wind chimes tapped softly in the evening breeze. I'd always loved that sound, but now it felt like it belonged to some other version of peace. My mind kept circling the same point. She hadn't asked to hold my keys. She decided, as if my permission no longer factored into anything. A man can ignore many things, but not the feeling of being slowly pushed aside in his own home. My gaze drifted toward the kitchen window. She moved around inside, humming faintly, as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just tucked away a piece of my independence, like it was clutter she needed to clear. I stayed in the yard longer than I meant to, pretending to study the wooden planter boxes I'd built last spring. My hands brushed over the rough edges, grounding myself in something I'd made, something that still belonged to me, without negotiation or permission. The air cooled as the sun slipped behind the houses. I could hear her closing cabinet doors inside, the dull rhythm familiar, yet strangely distant. My feet eventually carried me toward the back steps, not because my anger had passed, but because standing outside any longer would invite questions later. The door creaked slightly when I eased it open. I stepped inside, the smell of dinner still floating in the air, and wiped my hands on my jeans out of habit. She looked up from the sink. "Feel better?" she asked, as though I'd gone out to clear my head like a restless teenager. I didn't answer right away. My feet moved me across the kitchen toward the table, but my mind stayed somewhere between the yard and the place inside me that had begun to stir. I wasn't sure what part of myself had woken up, only that it had. I woke before the sun, stirred by a heaviness that didn't belong to the hour. Sleep had never come easy to me, but that morning felt different. Something lingered from the night before. Not anger, not quite sadness, just a quiet pressure behind my ribs. I dressed slowly, fastening each button as if stalling for time. Moving downstairs, I heard voices drifting in from the front lawn. My wife stood near the walkway with Mrs. Hanley, our next-door neighbour. She spoke with the same bright tone she used whenever she wanted to sound worried but brave. "He misplaced his keys again," she said. "I'm just doing my best to keep him safe." Mrs. Hanley touched her arm with sympathy. "Getting older is no joke. You're a good woman for looking after him." They both glanced toward the house. I felt the air shift between us, though I stayed behind the screen door. It hit me how fast a story can spread when the teller has emotion on her side. Stepping outside, I cleared my throat. "Morning." My wife turned with that soft smile she'd been practicing. "You were looking for your keys last night, remember? We were just chatting." I nodded, though the memory hadn't faded at all. The lie sat between us like a small, sharp object. Mrs. Hanley wished us a good day and returned home, leaving the two of us standing there. My wife patted my arm gently, almost theatrically. "You should eat something. You didn't rest well." Instead of answering, I walked back inside and filled a mug with coffee. I didn't need the caffeine as much as I needed something to hold. The warmth grounded me while her voice floated through the rooms as she made calls, her tone low and concerned. She spoke to someone from church next. "Yes, I'm keeping an eye on him. He's been forgetting things." "No, he won't admit it." The more she talked, the more I felt myself shrinking. I'd spent a lifetime building a reputation as a steady man, reliable, clear-headed, the sort of neighbour folks trusted with their spare keys or their kids when life got messy. Hearing her chip away at that image felt like standing in water that kept rising, inch by inch. I didn't interrupt her, didn't correct the record. A stubborn part of me hoped this was a phase, some strange, overprotective streak she'd snap out of. Another part recognized the pattern far too well. I'd watched people lose control of their own story before. First in the small things, then in the things that mattered most. The phone rang again, and she slipped into the bedroom to answer it. I sat at the kitchen table, tracing a crack in the wood with my thumb. My mind kept repeating the same question. How many people would believe me if I said she was exaggerating? How many would simply nod along and think they were seeing the first signs of decline? I finished my coffee and left the house before she returned to the kitchen. The morning air carried the smell of sidewalks warming up, a familiar scent that usually settled me. Today, it didn't do much. I headed toward Uptown, walking longer than necessary until I reached the small cafe where I used to meet old co-workers. Maurice was already there, seated at a corner table with a newspaper folded in half. He looked up, studied my face for all of 3 seconds, and set the paper aside. "Something's off," he said. "Sit down." I lowered myself into the chair, grateful for a familiar presence. Maurice had always had a way of cutting straight through the polite noise most people insist on creating. "You look worn," he added. "What happened?" My hands wrapped around the fresh mug a server placed in front of me. I didn't answer right away, trying to piece my thoughts together without sounding paranoid. "She took my keys last night," I finally said. "Told the neighbour I'd forgotten where I put them." Maurice raised an eyebrow. "You forget them?" "No. Then why'd she say it?" The bluntness in his voice hit harder than any worried tone could. I shrugged, unsure how to explain something I barely understood myself. "She's been acting different, bosier, saying I'm confused, telling folks I'm slipping." Maurice leaned back, studying me the way only a man who's lived enough years can. "That's not a small thing," he said quietly. "Words like that catch on fast." His concern didn't soothe me. It only confirmed the unease I'd been swallowing since dawn. I took a slow sip, staring at the steam rising from the cup. "Maybe I'm reading too much into it." "Maybe you're not," he countered. "A spouse protecting you is one thing. A spouse rewriting who you are, that's another." I looked around the cafe. People chatted, tapped on laptops, laughed over pastries. The ordinary rhythm of their morning made mine feel even more out of place. I'd walked through that door hoping for clarity, but the more we talked, the more isolating my silence from the night before felt. Morris tapped his finger against the table. "Tell me something. Did she give you those pills again last night?" My stomach tightened. "Yes." "And you took them?" "I always do." He didn't say anything immediately. His gaze drifted toward the window, then back to me, with a heaviness that felt like a warning. "Just be careful," he murmured. "Something in this doesn't sit right." The server passed by, placing a plate of toast between us. I forced myself to take a bite, even as my thoughts swirled. Morris didn't push further, but his silence carried its own weight. It reminded me of conversations we used to have at the postal centre, the ones where men knew danger before they could name it. After finishing half the coffee, I told him I needed some air. He nodded and folded his newspaper again. "If anything else happens, you come to me. Don't wait." I stepped outside and let the door swing closed behind me. The street had grown busier, engines rumbling, people weaving around one another. I blended into the movement without deciding where to go next. My thoughts drifted back toward home, where she was probably still playing the part of the concerned wife. By the time I turned down the block, the weight in my chest hadn't eased. The world carried on around me, but I couldn't shake the sense that something larger had begun to unwind. My hands slipped into my pockets as I walked, and I found myself wondering how many more people she'd spoken to by now. How many already believed her version of me? I kept walking, keeping my pace steady, as if the act alone could hold something together that was already coming loose. The trouble followed me faster than I expected. By midweek, an old co-worker from the postal centre called out of the blue. He hadn't reached out in months, but his voice carried an unfamiliar caution. "Heard you've been having a hard time remembering things," he said. "Everything all right?" I gripped the phone a little tighter. "Who told you that?" "Someone from your church mentioned it to my cousin. Word gets around. You know how Charlotte can be." A dull throb settled behind my eyes. I kept the conversation brief, claiming I was fine, but the uneasiness clung to me long after the call ended. The way rumours move is quick, almost effortless. A single lie can gallop farther than the truth ever will. When the line went dead, I walked to my desk drawer to grab a pen, noticing an envelope I didn't recognize. A bank statement addressed to me sat inside, but the signature at the bottom wasn't mine. The withdrawal wasn't small either. My thumb brushed over the print, tracing a name I supposedly approved. A cold tremor passed through me. I tried running through my memory, searching for a moment when I might have been careless. Nothing came. I folded the paper and tucked it into my jacket. My wife stepped into the room a moment later, moving as if she'd been listening for me. "Who were you talking to?" she asked. "Just an old co-worker." She drifted closer, gaze fixed on the phone resting in my hand. "You should let me handle your calls. You've been overwhelmed." Her tone had changed again, soft on the surface, but rigid underneath. I slipped the phone into my pocket before she could reach for it. "I'm all right," I said. She nodded as if she didn't believe a word. That evening, she hovered while I tried scheduling a doctor's appointment. Every time I attempted to speak, she interrupted to clarify something for me, each correction slicing a little deeper. "He forgets dates," she said into the phone. "I'm helping him stay organized." I stepped back, letting her finish. There was no point fighting over the conversation in the moment. Anything I said would be rewritten before the words even cooled. Later that night, the house settled into its usual hush. She thought I was asleep when she walked into the hallway, speaking in a low voice I hadn't heard from her in months. The tone told me everything. I eased myself upright, careful not to let the bed creak. My ears strained toward the faint murmur. She was in the living room, "He's slipping faster than I thought," she whispered. "I'm telling you, the paperwork won't be an issue." A man responded, his voice soft, uncertain. "Are you sure he won't fight this?" "He trusts me," she said. "He won't cause trouble." My chest tightened, but my hands stayed steady. I reached into the drawer beside me for a small digital recorder I kept from my working days. Habit, not paranoia, had kept it there. I switched it on, letting it capture every word drifting down the hallway. The conversation continued, pieces of it sharp enough to cut, references to money, mentions of documents, a plan forming without my knowledge. I didn't understand the full shape of it yet, but the intent was unmistakable. When their voices quieted, I turned off the recorder and slipped it beneath the mattress. That didn't feel secure enough. After lying still for a few minutes, I eased out of bed and carried the device to the garage. The faint smell of fertilizer greeted me as I stepped inside. Tools lined the pegboard, each one a small reminder of the years I'd spent keeping this house repaired with my own hands. I chose an old metal toolbox I rarely used anymore. The hinges creaked slightly as I lifted the lid. Nestled between a wrench and a roll of electrical tape, the recorder disappeared. I latched the box, stacked a smaller case over it, and stepped back. My pulse slowed once the toolboxes were shut. Not because I felt safe, just because I finally had something tangible, something that didn't rely on memory or trust or my word against hers. On the way back inside, I paused at the doorway, listening for movement. My wife's footsteps crossed the kitchen, then faded toward the bedroom. I waited until her shadow slipped past the hallway before returning to my side of the bed. Sleep refused to come. I lay there with my hands folded against my chest, staring at the ceiling, counting the faint ticks of the thermostat. My thoughts moved restlessly, hitting the same brick wall again and again. This wasn't forgetfulness, wasn't a misunderstanding, wasn't overprotection. Every detail pointed in one direction, and the weight of it pressed down on me so steadily I needed to breathe through it. I rolled to my side and watched the dim outline of the curtains shift in the air. The day had started with rumors and ended with a recording hidden in a metal box. Somewhere between those two things, a realization began to take shape. Quiet, heavy, impossible to ignore. The morning felt ordinary enough until my wife appeared in the doorway with her phone pressed to her ear. I didn't pay much attention at first. I was buttering a piece of toast, trying to settle the restless feeling left from the night before. Her tone sharpened a moment later, a tone I'd come to recognize as the one she used when she wanted something to sound urgent. "Yes, come by today if you can. He's been forgetting things more often." No, he won't mind." I looked up. "Who are you talking to?" She covered the speaker with her hand. "Dr. Sanders. I told him you've been having trouble with your memory. He'll stop by for a quick check." My jaw tightened. "You told him what?" "Don't start," she snapped. "This is for your own good. You've been slipping." I set the knife down and wiped my fingers on the napkin, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm fine. You didn't need to drag him into this." She ignored the comment entirely, walking past me with the self-assured stride of someone who had already made every decision for both of us. When Dr. Sanders arrived an hour later, he greeted me the same way he always had, but there was a faint strain to his politeness. "Heard you've been a little foggy lately. he said gently. Just want to run a few questions by you. My wife hovered behind him, arms folded, eyes fixed on me as if she were waiting for proof of something she desperately wanted to see. He began with simple questions. What day is it? Wednesday. Your full name? You know my name, Doctor. He chuckled nervously. Humour me. My answers came out smooth, clear, without hesitation. I recited my birth date, the address of our home, even the name of the street I grew up on. Dr. Sanders nodded, jotting notes while my wife watched every word like an accountant watching the books. Any dizziness? He asked. No. Confusion? I know exactly what's going on. He paused at that one, glancing at her before finishing the last of his checklist. Well, I don't see any concerning signs today, but if anything changes, let me know. She stepped forward quickly. Doctor, he's been hiding it. He gets mixed up sometimes, especially at night. You looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. Just keep an eye out. If something feels off, call me again. The moment the door shut behind him, she turned toward me, frustration tightening her mouth. You made me look ridiculous, she said. I told the truth. She threw her hands up. You were supposed to cooperate. I walked past her to the living room, not trusting myself to say anything more. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The bank's automated alert flashed across the screen. A large withdrawal had just cleared. My stomach dipped. I opened the app, my fingers tense. The amount wasn't small. It wasn't even a casual mistake. Someone had taken a chunk of our shared savings, and the authorization signature matched the one I'd seen on that suspicious document a few days earlier. My wife stepped into the room, smoothing her blouse as if she'd just finished a task and wanted to be acknowledged for it. You look pale, she said. I held the phone out just slightly. Did you do this? She didn't blink. I told you we needed to handle some bills. Not that amount. Don't accuse me of anything. You're confused. That word again. Confused. As if repeating it enough would make it true. I steadied my voice. I want to see the receipts. She shook her head, irritation flaring. You don't need to micromanage everything. Just trust me. Trust. I'd been giving her that freely, handing it over piece by piece until there wasn't much left to hold for myself. The message on my phone glowed stubbornly. Withdrawal confirmed. My breath thinned. The walls felt closer than they had earlier that morning. I walked toward the kitchen, needing space between us, needing a place to think. She followed, her footsteps quick, almost agitated. Why are you acting like this? She demanded. Why are you hiding things? Because you can't handle the details anymore. I stopped walking. The kitchen chair scraped as I pulled it out and sat down. My hands rested against my thighs, steady but tense. That's enough, I said quietly. She froze, not afraid, startled, as if she hadn't expected any resistance at all. A thin silence stretched across the room. She broke it first. I'm just doing what's best, she muttered. She grabbed her purse from the counter and headed toward the door. The purse swung harder than it needed to, brushing against the wall as she left. I stayed where I was long after the door shut behind her. A man knows when something small becomes something dangerous. There had been moments before The keys, the stories she told neighbours, the way she corrected me in public. But this felt different. Money taken behind my back, a doctor dragged into our home under false pretenses, and the expression she wore when she spoke for me, that had told its own story. My hand pressed to my chest, not from panic, but from a tightening awareness that things were sliding into a place I might not return from if I stayed passive. The chair creaked when I finally stood. My thumb brushed the bank alert again, then the signature line, then back to the alert. The realization didn't come all at once. It formed in pieces, slow but steady, until there was no denying the shape of it. A line had been crossed, and the ground beneath me had shifted for good. The call came while I was tightening a loose hinge on the back porch door. My phone buzzed against my pocket, and the unfamiliar number made me pause. "Mr. Thompson?" The voice belonged to a young man, polite but uneasy. "This is Jason from Carolina First Bank. I thought I should reach out to you directly." I shifted the drill aside. "What's going on?" Paper rustled on his end before he spoke again. "Someone came in this morning with a newly filed power of attorney document. They tried to access all your accounts, checking, savings, retirement, everything." A heaviness settled across my shoulders. "And you approved it?" "No, sir. The signature didn't match your older paperwork, and something about the situation didn't sit right with me. But they were insistent, so I wanted to confirm with you before escalating." Insistent. The word sliced deeper than I expected. "Who was it?" I asked. He hesitated. "Your wife." I leaned against the railing. My hand found the wood automatically, steadying me while the last of the morning breeze brushed past. "Thank you for calling," I said. "I'm holding the request until you come in. And Mr. Thompson, you might want to bring identification. This may get complicated." The line clicked off. I stayed there a long moment, thumb tapping the phone like the rhythm might somehow slow the pounding in my chest. Freedom Park felt calmer than usual that afternoon. I took the long path around the lake, hoping it would settle the storm growing inside me. C2 spotted me before I could pretend otherwise. "You look like you're carrying a load," she said, falling into step beside me. Her presence always had a grounding effect, never too soft, never too intrusive. The kind of friend who saw through pretense without demanding confession. "Had a call from the bank today," I murmured. Her eyebrows lifted. "Something wrong?" "Someone tried to take everything." "Don't tell me." "Yes." She exhaled, slow and controlled. "That's not concern. That's preparation." I didn't respond. She kept going. "People who worry about your health buy pill organizers. They don't file power of attorney papers behind your back." We stopped near a bench overlooking the water. Ducks drifted lazily across the surface, completely unaware that the whole world felt tilted for me. C2 rested her elbow on the back of the bench. "You keep trying to explain it away, but this isn't forgetfulness. She's setting the table for something bigger." A group of families passed us. Children chased each other, laughing, while the parents chatted without noticing much else. Their ease, that simple, effortless safety, felt foreign to me now. "I don't know when I lost my footing," I admitted. "You never lost it," she corrected. "Someone's been kicking the ground out from under you." Her words landed with a clarity I'd been avoiding. By the time I returned home, the house was filled with the faint hum of conversation. My wife sat at the dining table with two women from church. Their cups of tea were untouched. Their eyes darted toward me with something between sympathy and doubt. "There he is," she said brightly. The saccharine tone made my stomach tighten. One of the women smiled uncertainly. "We heard you've had a rough few weeks." My wife sighed dramatically. "He's been overwhelmed, gets upset easily. I'm doing my best, but it's a lot. A lot." As if I were a burden held up solely by her grace. "Don't mind him," she added. "His memory's been slipping, and it makes him defensive." The last thread of patience inside me stretched thin. She continued before I could speak. "I've been calling doctors, getting paperwork ready, taking over the bills. He can't keep up anymore. I just wish he'd appreciate what I'm trying to do."
The performance was flawless. Soft tremble in the voice, gentle rub of her temples, leaning toward the women like she needed their support just to stay upright. One woman placed a hand over hers. "You're strong for handling all this." "I'm trying," she whispered. Her glance flicked toward me, triumphant in its subtlety. She wasn't just shaping a narrative, she was sealing it. Brick by brick, witness by witness. I stepped into the kitchen, needing distance. My fingers grazed the edge of the countertop, then dropped to my sides. Her voice carried from the next room. "Sometimes he forgets where he puts things. He gets confused, frustrated. I'm scared to leave him alone too long." Confused, frustrated, scared to leave him alone. The claims layered themselves like wet plaster, sticking before anyone even questioned the shape. A low boil rose in my chest. Not fury, something quieter, tighter. A controlled awareness that every story she told chipped away at my credibility, at my autonomy, at my voice. Footsteps approached. She peeked into the doorway. "You okay?" "We need to talk." Her eyes hardened just slightly. "Not now." "Yes, now." "I said not now." She returned to her audience before I could say another word. When the women finally left, she followed me into the living room, arms crossed tight. "You embarrassed me," she snapped. "You embarrassed yourself. Don't twist things. They're worried about you. Everyone is." "No, they're worried because of you." She blinked quickly, shifting into another gear, the wounded expression she used whenever her control was threatened. "Why are you doing this to me? I've been taking care of everything. I'm exhausted. But you don't see that. You only see mistakes." Her voice cracked, just enough to sound believable. "I'm the one holding this family together," she continued, "and all you do is question me." I studied her face, searching for any trace of the woman I used to know. There was nothing left that resembled love, only calculation. Someone tried to use a forged document at the bank today. Her jaw twitched. "Maybe you forgot and signed something." "I didn't." "You can't be sure." The final brick slid into place. I stepped away from her, crossing the room with slower, measured strides. She waited for a rebuttal, a slip of temper she could grab and twist into another story. Nothing came. My hand found the back of the nearest chair, not gripping, anchoring. Her footsteps followed, soft but insistent. "If you'd just let me help, none of this would be difficult." Difficult,
She said it like I was an obstacle, not a partner, like I was something to be managed. I looked at her one last time before turning toward the hallway. The house felt strangely hollow, as if some part of it had already shifted away from us. A choice had formed quietly inside me, clear as daylight, even if no words accompanied it yet. And while I didn't say anything aloud, the silence that followed carried its own weight as I reached for the doorknob. The first thing I packed was the small pill bottle. It rattled faintly when I slipped it into my jacket, the sound sharper than it should have been. I left the house before sunrise, walking instead of driving, so she wouldn't hear the engine. The streets were empty, the air cool, and each step gave me enough steadiness to keep moving toward the urgent care clinic on King's Drive. A nurse at the reception desk greeted me with a tired smile. "What brings you in today, Mr. Thompson?" "I need these analysed," I said, placing the bottle on the counter. Nothing dramatic, just firm. She blinked at the request, but didn't question it. "Toxicology screening?" "Yes. Send the results to this email." I slid a card across the desk with an address she'd never seen before, an account I'd set up at the library that morning. She nodded, gathering the bottle. "It may take a couple days." "That's fine." No tremor in my voice, no hesitation. Something inside me had shifted overnight, carving out a colder space where fear used to sit. Leaving the clinic, I headed straight to the credit union. The lobby wasn't busy, which made things easier. I used the self-service station to print every financial statement available, from bank accounts to insurance policies. Each page fed into my folder. Each folder went into the USB tucked into my inner pocket. A rhythm took shape. Print, review, save. Steady enough to drown the noise of everything else. A small part of me wondered when I'd started acting like someone preparing for a storm. Another part answered without hesitation. The moment the truth stopped hiding. Back home, she was still asleep. I moved through the house without touching much, without disturbing the usual order. My office door clicked softly behind me. I spread the documents across the desk, one after another, aligning them by date and category until the timeline finally stopped swimming in my mind. Her comments to the neighbours. The doctor visit arranged without my consent. The signature that wasn't mine. The pills she insisted I swallow. The forged authorization at the bank. And the conversation I'd recorded late that night. Every line connected cleanly. Too cleanly. Like a puzzle she never expected me to piece together. The realization didn't shock me anymore. It simply sat there, solid, undeniable, cold. I copied the recording from the hidden USB, placing it discreetly in a folder labeled Home Maintenance. Anyone else would overlook it. I wasn't giving her the chance to erase a single thing. By noon, the temperature had risen, but the air inside the house stayed strangely heavy. When I checked my email, the inbox flashed a message I didn't recognize. "Sign in from a new device, Winston-Salem, North Carolina." It wasn't me. I changed the password immediately. The next notification appeared within minutes. "Your recovery phone number has been updated." That wasn't me either. A tight pressure gathered behind my ribs. I opened the settings only to find the recovery information already locked behind security questions I didn't create. Before I could react further, another alert popped up on my phone. Your voicemail has been disabled. I stared at the screen until my hands stopped shaking. This wasn't care. This wasn't concern. Someone was trying to seal me off, cut my access to information, isolate my communication, blind me before the next move. I reset the phone to factory settings, every file gone, every login wiped clean. The emptiness of the screen brought an odd comfort, like starting over on a clean sheet of paper. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside to take the trash to the curb. A dark SUV sat idling across the street. Unfamiliar, but not completely out of place. The windows were tinted. The engine ran low. Nobody stepped out. The morning mail arrived. As I reached for the mailbox, the SUV rolled a few feet forward, then stopped again. Maybe it was nothing. Plenty of people parked along this road, but the timing didn't feel accidental. Back inside, I kept the door locked, checking the curtains only once. The SUV was still there. Toward evening, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. You've been under a lot of stress. You should rest. Another followed seconds later. Don't make things harder than they need to be. No name attached. No context needed. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the phone loosely. My pulse slowed instead of quickening. Fear had burned itself out days ago, leaving something steadier behind, something sharper. The hallway creaked as she moved around the kitchen. Cabinet doors opened and closed. Silverware chimed faintly. Nothing unusual, yet each sound carried a different weight now. Every domestic noise felt like the preface to something calculated. I placed the phone in the drawer beside me and stood. The air smelled faintly of detergent and lemon cleaner, the same smell I'd known for years. It didn't offer comfort anymore. It reminded me how easily a familiar space could turn against you. Downstairs, she called out. "Dinner will be ready in a few minutes." Her voice floated up the steps, warm and practiced. I listened for a long moment, watching the banister instead of moving toward it. My hand drifted to the inside pocket of my shirt, where the USB rested. The weight of it steadied me. I headed toward the bathroom instead, turning on the faucet as a cover for the quiet. Somewhere behind the flow of water, I tried to decide what part of the remaining piece I was willing to trade for the truth I was chasing. The answer wasn't clear yet, but the path toward it was becoming impossible to ignore as I set the towel aside and reached for the mirror handle. She didn't ask me that morning. She simply appeared at the doorway while I buttoned my shirt and said we had an appointment downtown. "Wear something presentable," she added. Her tone carried the kind of firmness people use with children or patients. Not a husband who'd handled his own life for 70+ years. A dull heaviness still pulsed behind my eyes. Whatever she'd slipped into last night's dose hadn't worn off completely. My steps felt slower, my balance less certain, like the ground had been shifted half an inch to the left without warning. She watched me from the hall, keys dangling from her fingers. "Let's not make this difficult." I followed her out,
Fighting in that moment would have only fed the story she'd been spinning about me. The office sat on the 10th floor of a building I'd never visited. The elevator doors opened to a narrow lobby where a man in a pressed suit waited with a smile too quick to be genuine. "Mr. Thompson," he greeted me. "I'm glad you're here." He didn't offer his name until we were already inside the conference room. "I'm Attorney Blake." He slid a stack of papers across the polished table. "Your wife tells me you've been having a hard time keeping up with things, so we've prepared a care authority agreement. Routine, just helps her manage your medical and financial decisions if needed." My wife folded her hands neatly on the table, as if this were all a favor to me. I pushed the papers back with one finger. "I didn't request this." Blake adjusted his glasses. "It's for your protection. I can protect myself." The words scratched their way out, rougher than intended. Last night's fog clung to my thoughts, leaving everything slightly blurred. Even breathing felt heavier than usual. He tapped the top page. "It only requires your signature." My wife spoke next. "Sweetheart, you're exhausted. You need help, and this will give me permission to make sure you're safe." The word sweetheart struck hard. She hadn't used it in years, not sincerely, not without expecting something in return. Blake angled a pen toward my hand. "Just sign here." My fingers didn't move. The longer I looked at that signature line, the more memories pressed in. The hospital room years ago, when my first wife lay motionless after her stroke. The helplessness of that night came back, like it had been waiting for its cue. I remembered holding her hand, whispering that I'd take care of everything. I meant it then. I kept that promise. Now someone else was trying to turn those same vows against me. I leaned back, keeping my breathing steady. "I won't sign anything today." Blake's smile faltered. "It's already been reviewed."
"This is simply a formality. It's not happening." My wife stiffened beside me, shoulders rising slowly. "You're being stubborn again." I rose carefully, pushing the chair back with a quiet scrape. "We're done." Blake tried one more time. "Mr. Thompson, refusal could complicate." "We're done." My legs felt uncertain as I walked out, but each step gained strength. She followed quickly, her heels tapping sharply behind me. "You embarrassed me," she hissed as we reached the elevator. "You tried to make decisions for me. Because you need guidance. I need honesty." The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. She stayed in the hall. Her last words floated in as the doors slid shut. "You're going to regret this." Maybe I would, but not in the way she expected. When we reached home, the house felt unusually quiet. She disappeared into the bedroom without speaking. I poured myself a glass of water, taking slow sips until the lingering fog from last night's pills eased enough to think clearly again. My phone buzzed. A new email notification slid across the top of the screen. The subject line froze me. Urgent family update regarding Dad's mental decline. Dad? She'd written to my cousins, my nieces, my sister's children, anyone in the extended family who still held respect for me. I opened the message and read each line with a tightening chest. He's becoming confused. He gets angry when corrected. I'm doing everything I can. Please keep him in your prayers. The story painted me as a man drifting away from reality, forgetful, unstable, fragile. And she'd sent it before dragging me to that lawyer's office, like she'd already prepared the audience for my supposed incompetence. I scrolled again, my jaw locked when I reached the final line. If anything happens, I'll handle arrangements. He shouldn't be making decisions alone. Arrangements. My hand curled around the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. The conversation in the lawyer's office suddenly made perfect sense. The pills, the forged documents, the whispers in the house, the SUV parked outside. This email was the missing piece, the one that revealed the full picture. I wasn't being protected. I was being removed. Not physically, not yet, but piece by piece, voice, autonomy, identity, all being stripped away under the guise of care. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. She appeared at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, watching me with a calmness that didn't match the violence of what she'd just done. "I hope you saw the email," she said softly. I did. Good. They needed to know what's going on. I rested the phone on the table. "What exactly do you think is going on?" She tilted her head, adopting a look of pity so practiced it almost passed for real. "You're slipping, and I'm trying to protect you from yourself." A fresh wave of exhaustion pressed against me, but something stronger pushed back. Not anger, not fear, but a clarity that settled in the space behind my ribs. She had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I stood, feeling the weight of the moment pull everything into sharp focus. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes flickered. A tiny, startled blink she tried to hide. I walked past her slowly, making my way upstairs. Halfway up, I paused, not because of doubt, but because the truth was finally unmistakable. If I stayed silent now, I wouldn't have a life left to defend. Her voice trailed behind me. "Where are you going?" I reached the landing without answering, the echo of her question following me down the hall as I opened the bedroom door. The email arrived just after dawn. I saw the subject line, "Toxicology panel completed," and my pulse thudded once, heavy enough to slow my breath. The results opened without hesitation, as if they'd been waiting for me to wake. Compound detected, scopolamine derivative, cognitive impairment class, not compatible with any listed vitamin or supplement. The words didn't shout. They didn't need to. They sat there quietly, confirming what my body had been trying to tell me for weeks. The pills weren't vitamins. They were engineered to make me doubt myself. I shut the laptop gently and set both palms on the table. Not to steady myself, more to keep the anger from spilling out before I could use it. C2 called later that morning. She didn't bother with a greeting. "You're up." "I am. I'm near your side of town. Walk with me?" We met at a small greenway behind the library, one of the few places where conversation stayed private, without feeling secretive. She noticed something in my expression before I spoke. "You got the results?" I nodded. She exhaled slowly, hands sliding into her jacket pockets. "Then you need to hear something I kept quiet about. I wasn't sure until now." I stopped walking. "Tell me." "A few weeks ago, I was leaving the mall around 9. I saw your wife at the parking garage. She wasn't alone." Her pause wasn't for dramatic effect. It was the kind someone takes when stepping into unwelcome territory. There was a younger man with her, hands on her waist, close, too close for anything innocent. My jaw tightened. You sure it was her? I didn't want to believe it myself. I walked past them just to check. She pulled back when she saw me. He looked irritated, like he didn't want to hide anymore. C2 looked toward the creek, giving me space to absorb it. I wasn't planning to say anything. Affairs happen, marriages break. But with what you've told me, none of this stands alone. Another piece clicked into place, cold, sharp, fitting the outline of everything else she'd built. Back home, I went straight to the garage. The smell of motor oil and old wood hit me before I flipped on the small lamp by the workbench. My hands moved toward the red toolbox, almost on instinct. I lifted the tray and reached into the narrow space beneath it where I'd hidden the USB. The metal casing felt warm from the afternoon heat trapped in the garage. I plugged it into the old laptop I kept for woodworking designs. The audio file loaded instantly. At first, only muffled voices came through. Then her tone emerged, clipped, irritated. I told you he's manageable. Just stop worrying. A man spoke next, voice lower than I remembered from that night. I don't like this, Marie. He ain't some stranger. He's old. He barely knows what's happening. That's the problem. You said this would be quick. A chair scraped. She began pacing. I recognized the rhythm. Don't act righteous now. You knew the plan. Another silence followed. Then the man spoke again, quieter. I didn't know you'd go this far. The pills, the paperwork, it's too much. My skin prickled. That tone, uneasy, wavering, held something I hadn't expected. Reluctance. She hissed back at him. You want out? Fine. But you don't get a damn thing if you run now. Nothing. Understand? I never cared about the money. Then why are you still here? Her voice cracked on the last word, not with sadness, but with frustration, angry desperation. The man sighed. I should have walked away when you started talking about taking control of his accounts. Don't start preaching. I ain't preaching. I'm done. Footsteps moved toward the door. She scrambled after him. Wait, you can't leave now. Watch me. The recording cut off abruptly. I leaned back in the chair, letting the details settle into an unmistakable shape. Her lover was backing out, not out of mercy, but fear. The foundation beneath her plan had started to crumble before she even realized it, and she was trying to finish the job alone. The realization didn't frighten me. It steadied me. That man, whoever he was, had given me more truth than he intended. His hesitation was her flaw, the weak seam, the piece she couldn't control. I replayed the last minute of the audio, isolating each line, searching for anything else buried in tone or wording. The moment he said, "I'm done," she sounded cornered. Cornered people make mistakes. I saved the recording in 3 different folders, then transferred copies onto 2 fresh USB drives I'd bought earlier. One went into a small envelope I slid behind the water heater tank. The other I placed deep inside a sock in my dresser drawer, an unlikely hiding place, but that was the point. When I left the garage, the sky had darkened. She hadn't returned yet. That gave me time to think, really think, without the suffocating presence of her watching every move. I poured a glass of water, took it to the dining table, and sat with my hands wrapped around it. The house creaked with its usual end of day settling, something I'd heard 1,000 times, but now listened to differently, Every sound became a reminder that this home had turned into a place where my decisions, my voice, my life had been slowly rewritten. The toxicology email, C2's testimony, the affair, the hesitation of her accomplice, the recording, the forged documents, the pills, everything finally had a name and a pattern. A car pulled into the driveway, tires crunching over gravel. A door closed gently, too gently for a normal return home. I tilted my head slightly, listening. Keys slid into the front lock. I didn't move from my chair. The water glass sat untouched in front of me. My fingers loosened around it as the door opened and her footsteps crossed the threshold. Her voice carried down the hallway. "I picked up dinner. Hope you're hungry." I stayed still, letting her announcement hang in the air without answering. Because now, for the first time in weeks, every piece of the puzzle sat clearly in front of me. And the picture it showed was one she never expected me to see. She set the takeout on the counter without glancing my way, humming under her breath as if the last weeks hadn't happened. I watched her move around the kitchen, calm, rehearsed, confident. The kind of confidence someone carries when they believe every exit is under their control. I stood and walked to the living room. "We need to talk." She didn't even turn. "About what? You're exhausted. Eat first." "Now." The firmness in my voice made her stop. She faced me slowly, irritation flickering across her mouth, before she smoothed it into a worried expression. "You're scaring me," she said. I motioned toward the dining table. A folder rested there. Thick, organized, held together with a black binder clip. She froze as soon as she saw it. "What's that?" "Sit down." "I'm not sitting anywhere until you explain." "Sit." Something in my tone unsettled her. She obeyed, lowering herself into the chair with stiff movements, eyes locked on the folder like it might burn her. I took the seat across from her. "I'm going to say this once," I began. "No yelling, no excuses, no tears, no pretending you're the victim. I'm past all of that." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "You're being dramatic again." I opened the folder. The first document slid across the table. Toxicology results from the clinic on King's Drive. She glanced at the paper and scoffed. "I don't know what that is." "It's the breakdown of the substance you put in those pills every night." The scoff weakened. Her eyes darted toward the kitchen drawer where she kept the bottles. "Those were vitamins." "Those were scopolamine derivatives." Her throat bobbed, but she steadied herself quickly. "Anyone can forge medical paperwork." "You've been confused lately. Maybe you walked into the wrong office." I laid out the second envelope before she could finish. "The bank statements you tried to access with a forged power of attorney." She pushed her chair back. "That's a lie. They must have mixed me up with someone else. I never even..." "Jason from the credit union ID'd you himself. He looked you in the eye." Her mouth opened, shut, then opened again. "So what if I tried to help manage things? You're forgetting appointments, losing track of conversations. I'm trying to protect you." "By replacing me." Her hand trembled now. "Don't twist things. You've always been too trusting. I was handling the hard stuff because someone needed to." I leaned forward slightly. "The lies won't work tonight."
She stiffened, then shifted tactics with practiced speed. You think you have evidence? You have nothing legal, nothing that would stand up in court. If you accuse me, I swear I'll tell everyone you hit me. I'll say you threatened me. I'll say you've been unstable and violent. Her voice rose, shaky but determined. And they'll believe me. I've already told them you forget things. I've told them you lash out. They'll say you snapped. They'll say I tried to help you. You look like an abuser. A strange calm flooded me, steady, cold, almost merciful. I reached into my pocket. Her face paled instantly. What are you doing? A small USB drive touched the table with a soft tap. This is the recording you didn't know I made, the night you thought I was asleep. She blinked twice, unable to control it. You're bluffing. Play it. Her hand didn't move. I clicked the file myself. Her voice filled the room first, sharp, impatient, unmistakable. I told you he's manageable. Just stop worrying. She lurched forward, slamming her palm on the table. Turn that off. I didn't. The man's voice followed, uneasy and hesitant. I didn't know you'd go this far. I'm done. Her face drained of colour. She reached for the laptop as if she could snatch the sound out of the air, erase it before it finished. I pulled it out of reach. The recording ended. Silence returned, heavy, dense, waiting. She sat frozen, lips parted, breath shallow and uneven. I placed one final envelope on the table. The clinic emailed me the full results this morning. Confirmed drug concentration. Confirmed it couldn't have been accidental. Her fingers hovered above the envelope, but never made contact. The room settled around us. No more excuses, no tears, no frantic explanations. Just the truth, laid out piece by piece. She slumped back into the chair, eyes unfocused. You don't understand, she whispered. I understand perfectly. A shiver passed through her shoulders. She tried one more time to gather herself, to find some angle, some escape. We can fix this, she said weakly. We can talk to a counsellor. We can... No. A small, broken sound escaped her throat. She bowed her head, the weight of the evidence pressing down harder than anything I could have said. I gathered the folder, stood, and closed it carefully. She didn't look up. The only sound between us was her uneven breathing as I stepped away from the table and walked toward the hallway, leaving her sitting there, with every lie unraveling around her. I didn't sleep much that night, but the restlessness didn't twist the way it used to. It came with purpose, not confusion. By sunrise, the house had settled into a stillness I no longer mistook for peace. I dressed carefully, buttoning my shirt with steady fingers, and gathered the folder I'd prepared the night before. The kitchen light was on. She stood by the counter, staring at her phone. Her eyes were swollen, but not from regret. More from the panic of someone who finally realized the net had closed. I placed the folder on the table. I'm leaving in 15 minutes. She startled. Leaving? Why? My lawyer's waiting. After that, the police. Her grip tightened around the phone. You don't have to do this.
We can talk. We can fix. No, we're past talking. She opened her mouth again, but the words got trapped somewhere in her throat. I watched the realization hit her in slow waves. Every version of the story she'd prepared, every excuse, every tear, every performance lost its usefulness. I unlatched the folder and spread the documents across the table. Divorce petition, signed. Toxicology results, certified. Audio recording, time-stamped. Bank statements, verified. Her hands hovered above the paper, trembling. Please, you're misunderstanding what I was trying to do. I understand exactly what you were trying to do. She swallowed hard. I never meant to hurt you. You almost erased me. The sentence wasn't loud, but it drained every remaining colour from her face. She backed onto the stool like her legs had forgotten how to hold her. I picked up the folder again. I'll be gone most of the day. The officers might come by later, cooperate with them. She stared at the table as if the papers might disappear if she blinked long enough. The lawyer's office felt colder than I expected. He read through everything without interrupting me, his eyes narrowing at each page. When he reached the toxicology report, his jaw clenched. This is attempted elder abuse, he said. You did the right thing coming in early. I nodded, but the words didn't give me relief. They just confirmed the reality I'd already accepted. Are you ready to file? He asked. Yes. Do it today. He handed me a pen. The divorce petition sat on the desk between us. Solid. Final. Exactly what needed to happen. I signed every page with a hand that barely wavered. When the last signature dried, he closed the file. Once the police receive these materials, they'll open a criminal case. You won't have to confront her again. Not in person. I exhaled, slow and deep. Good. He gathered the evidence and headed out to make copies. I stepped into the hallway, resting my palm briefly against the wall just to remind myself that I was here, awake, choosing the next move instead of reacting to hers. The officer at the precinct met me with a firm handshake. I slid the USB across the desk first. Start with that. He plugged it in. The first few seconds of the recording played, enough to make him lift his head sharply. You got this yourself? Yes. You were smart to do it. I placed the toxicology report next to the USB. Then the bank statements. Then the attempted power of attorney document. His expression changed from concern to something colder, professional but unmistakably disgusted. This isn't just fraud, Mr. Thompson. This is poisoning. Deliberate, repeat dosing. You could have died. I didn't answer. The truth didn't need my voice anymore. We'll file charges today, he continued. Elder abuse, attempted financial exploitation, criminal poisoning. You won't go back to that house alone. I'm not going back at all. He nodded slowly, understanding the weight beneath the words. By late afternoon, the sky hung low and grey. I drove back to the house with 2 officers beside me, not because I needed protection, but because they needed to serve the warrant and secure a few items. She was on the couch when we walked in, small and wilted. Marie Harris? She flinched at the sound of her name. Yes? You're being detained for questioning related to criminal poisoning and financial fraud against a vulnerable adult. Her knees nearly buckled. He's lying. He's lying. I took care of him. The officers didn't entertain the theatrics. Ma'am, stand up, hands behind your back. She spun toward me, eyes wide,
searching for the man who used to forgive her, the man she counted on to stay silent.
Please, tell them it's a misunderstanding. Tell them I love you. Tell them.
I turned away before she could finish. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Some truths don't need audiences. The officers guided her out the door.
Her voice trailed behind them, dissolving into something thin and distant. I stayed in the middle of the living room, letting the quiet fill the space where her chaos used to sit. I packed lightly, one duffel, one small suitcase. The rest of the house stayed untouched. I didn't want reminders of a life built on lies. The home had belonged to me once. Then it belonged to us. Then, without permission, it became a stage she used to dismantle me, piece by piece. Now it belonged to no one. I locked the front door and slid the key into my pocket. My steps carried me down the walkway without hesitation. The air felt crisp, almost clean. Cars passed on the main road in steady rhythms. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Everyday noises, nothing dramatic, nothing weighted, just life continuing. I paused on the sidewalk and looked back once, not for nostalgia, but confirmation. I needed to see the place one last time, to make sure I felt nothing tying me there. A long breath filled my lungs, and for the first time in months, it didn't hurt. No forgiving, no blaming, no vengeance. Just the truth standing in the open, and me standing beside it. I stepped forward and kept walking, letting the door behind me close on its own, letting the quiet swallow whatever remained of her story, and letting the cold, steady silence wrap itself around me like an honest companion at last.